Hey, good morning, everyone. Wherever you find yourself this morning, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the meeting place. My name's Garry. I'm one of the pastors here. Glad you decided to hang out with us this morning as we wrap up a series that we've been in for the last few weeks called Emerge, where the idea is that during this weird time that we find ourselves in, this kind of a worldwide pause that we've experienced, that it might be a good time for us to reevaluate what was or wasn't working in our old normal as we begin to emerge into a new normal. But before we begin, I want to just take a few moments to pause and recognize some people from our meeting place family who definitely deserve some recognition. For some, this year marked the end of 12 years of school, while for others it marked the last year of university. And so on behalf of the meeting place, I want to say congratulations to Katie and Thomas Robinson, Taylor Trowbridge, Daniel Barker, and Connor James, who all just wrapped up 12 years of school. Way to go. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention Maddie Kolke, who graduated from VIU from the graphic design program. So way to go, everyone. Well done. If you're in our chat room on Online Church, there's a little heart button at the bottom. Show them some love. Just keep clicking on that button and just let them know how much you appreciate them and congratulate them. So once again, all the best to all of the grads as you turn this page and enter into a new chapter in your life. Now, the second thing I wanted to touch on is what's happening now that we have entered into phase 3 of the reopening plan here in BC, which, as you may have heard, includes the reopening of movie theaters, in particular the Avalon, which is where we call home. In short, bottom line, phase 3 doesn't affect us all that much. And here's why. Firstly, the cap for large gatherings remains unchanged at 50 people or less, which would mean in order for us to get everyone to come on a Sunday morning and enjoy being with each other in the live environment, we would have to have run a minimum of 4 services on a Sunday morning. To go along with that, you guys would actually be required to register for a service. We would have to come up with a registration system where you would actually sign up and be assigned a seat that you would have to sit in. And it's all done by government regulations that require that for contact tracing. Should anyone at any time be tested positive for the virus, they want to be able to go back and say, hey, who was in the theater during this time? So it's understandable, but we would have to do that. In addition, we would have to be required to allow time for the theater staff to go in and clean any areas that we occupied during a service. So hallways, lobby, washrooms, and of course the theater that we meet in. I've been in contact and talking with theater management over the last several weeks. I was talking to them earlier this week with all the news that was coming out. And I asked them, I said, well, how long do you think that would take to kind of clean everything so we could let the next batch of people in for a service? They said they have no idea because they haven't done it yet. They're not even open themselves. But right now, they're allowing 2 hours for that to happen between show times. And so if we took that as a timeline, we would probably be able to squeeze in 1 service, possibly 2 if we had the first service at like 7 in the morning or something like that. After the service, you would be directed to the nearest exit, as there is absolutely no congregating or gathering in hallways or the lobbies anywhere. So you kind of get ushered into the theater, you watch, and then you have to leave right away, which kind of negates what we're really wanting to do as a church, which is to kind of hang out together, right? Now, I want to let you know that, you might be thinking, well, man, that's just like, why are they making it so hard? Well, I just want you to know it's not the theater that's making it difficult. They're not imposing all this stuff on us. They are simply doing what's required of them by the government and the health officials. And it's all in the safety of their staff and their patrons. And we want to operate within that too. But I want you to hear this. that should we not return to the theater for several months, there is no worry whatsoever that we would lose our spot and someone else would sneak in there and we would be left without a home. So there's no worries there, and we're just going to continue to kind of update things as we go along. Staff and leadership, we're staying on top of everything that's coming out in the news. And if there are any changes that allow us to go back to the theater, we'll be ready to go. We can get in there pretty quick. So I just want you to know that. We're also constantly looking for creative ways for us to be with, to hang out, and to see each other, as this is what we're craving the most. This is what we're missing the most, is hanging out together. So we get that, and we're looking for creative ways, so stay tuned for some ideas that we're going to be throwing out there. And again, it's all dependent on your comfort level as well. Now, I'm not a betting man. If I went to Vegas, I would come back absolutely broke. I'm just a terrible bettor. But if I was a betting man, here's a bet I would go all in on, and it's this. The bet that you are ready for things to get back to normal, especially as far as getting together on a Sunday morning. And here's why I would go all in on that bet, because that's what I want. Yeah, I miss you guys. I can't even begin to say how much I miss you guys. And I want to see you face to face. I want to see that, that piece of green salad still stuck in your teeth and not say anything to you. I want us to be back in the theater. I want to hang out in the hallways, in the lobby, and have a coffee or go out and have lunch in the food court and do all of that without having to worry about social distancing. But the reality is, that day may be a long way off. According to the BC health officials, they've indicated that the return to large gatherings of 50 or more won't happen until we move into phase 4 of our reopening plan, which won't happen until there's a vaccine available. Estimates for that happening range anywhere from the optimistic side of late this year, sometime in 2020, November, December. Others are spring or summer 2021. Some say it'll even be longer than that, which means we may not be able to gather like we used to for the foreseeable future. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning? Now, here's the thing, though. When you hear it like that, maybe your first reaction is, it's a little deflating, discouraging. It's like, what? It might be that long, like a year or 8 months or longer? I want you to hear me when I say this. I'm grateful for the technology that we're leveraging right now that allows us to meet. Even though we're not together, we're together. I mean, think of what we would be doing if this was 30, 40 years ago. I have no idea how we'd be doing it. So, yeah, it's not the same as being together in the same room, but at least we can be together. We got the chat room happening. We got pictures being taken. Make sure you keep sending those pictures in. I saw in the chat just before I came up here that some people were saying, we got to freshen up the pictures on there. We can only do that if you're sending them in. So make sure you send them in. Just send them to admin@themeetingplace.org. Address is on your screen, and we'll put the pictures up. Now, one of the things, this is really interesting. One of the things I keep reading about in the various church leadership blogs that I follow is how the current season, a lot of people are looking at this current season of the church meeting online as just the church being in a holding pattern. It's almost like the church is like a plane waiting for clearance to land, and it kind of circles the airport. It's not really doing anything or going anywhere. It's just waiting. And everything is suspended. Everything's on hold. Everything's canceled until we can start meeting again. And I get that. I'll be honest. I've even had similar thoughts go through my mind. We just need to kind of hunker down and hang on, and brace ourselves until we get through this. But I don't know how long that is. And here's something that I found interesting. When I tend to have those thoughts, when I kind of think like, oh man, I don't know how much longer we can do this or anything like that, I'm reminded of some words that Jesus spoke to a crowd thousands of years ago. They're words that are actually the foundation of what our vision as a church are built upon. And our vision, which we rolled out last year, is this. We want to be a church that is known for unleashing God's extravagant, over-the-top, ridiculous, mind-bending, mind-blowing, unfathomable love on this city in any way, shape, or form that we can do that. And here's the words that gave birth to that vision. Jesus was on the side of a hill, and he was meeting with some people, and he said, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. Unleash God's love in incredible ways. Not for the pat on the back, not for the 2 thumbs up, not for the slow clap, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father." In other words, they'll say, "Wow, that's an awesome God." So put another way, what Jesus is really saying is, look, if there's any hope for your family, if there's any hope for your school, your workplace, your neighborhood, your city, I want you to take my light that is in you into the dark places of this world and just let it shine. And we all know, we only have to watch, quickly scroll through or listen or watch the various news feeds that we can grab on our computer, our phones, our tablets, and our TVs to know how dark this world really is. I mean, man, if it's not mass shootings or mass unemployment that make up the headlines, it's stories of political corruption or social unrest or a second wave of COVID-19 that's going to be far worse than the first. It's a dark world. And it causes a lot of people to feel anxious and helpless and hopeless. But there is hope. Even when things look bleak and out of control, which over the last few weeks, man, it was really hard, if even possible, to find any good news coming out of anywhere. And when it feels like that, when we feel like Luke Skywalker and his gang trying to go up against the dark side and it seems like the dark side's winning, it can be easy to just say, there's no way out of this. There is no hope. But there is hope. As I was putting this talk together, I was thinking about darkness. I don't know if you've thought about darkness much, but darkness is a very interesting thing. Unlike light, darkness can't be harnessed or directed towards something, which explains why if you went to the hardware store, if you went to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, you won't find an aisle that sells dark bulbs because they don't exist. You can't walk into a room and flip a switch and make it darker because darkness, by very definition, only exists in the absence of light. And so if you have no light on, you'll have nothing but darkness. And darkness can feel foreboding, oppressive, powerful, scary. I mean, just ask anyone who suffers from nyctophobia, which is fear of the dark. But here's the thing. You introduce just a little tiny bit of light, there'll be a little less darkness. Think night lights. Or, Mom, Dad, can you leave the door open just a crack? We've all experienced this when the power goes out at night in our homes and we get plunged into darkness. You stumble around and you find a small candle and you light it. And even if it's a birthday candle that you found, that little bit of flame will push back the darkness. Add another candle and another and another and another, and it gets brighter, and there's less darkness. You could look at it this way. If there's a battle between light and dark, light wins every time because darkness exists only in the absence of light. John, he's a man that shows up in the Bible. He actually has a book named after him. He wrote a letter to a bunch of first century Christians. He was arguably, a lot of scholars say, Jesus' best friend. They were really, really close. And John takes some time to write about his experiences with Jesus. And here's how he describes Jesus, his friend. He says, Jesus is the light that shines into the darkness. Which means Jesus is the hope that shines into hopelessness. Jesus is the love that shines into hatred. He's the peace that shines into chaos and conflict. He's the comfort that shines into our pain. You know what? That is great news. Because that means no matter what happens in this world, no matter what kind of darkness you may be facing personally, it cannot overpower or overwhelm Jesus. Because as John puts it, he says, the light, referring to Jesus, shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. In other words, Jesus wins every time. Times it may not feel like it, but Jesus wins every time. And you know what? That's a nice, comforting thought, isn't it? But if we're honest, it doesn't last long, does it? The reality is that not long after we shut off our computers, close our laptops, turn off our TVs, real life is going to come crashing in. And the bills that needed to be paid before this live stream started are still going to be there, but the money isn't. The relationships with our significant other that are under strain and coming apart at the seams are still going to be coming apart at the seams. Our kids who are bouncing off the walls and taxing our patience and our resolve and making us wonder if we're ruining them the way we're raising them are still going to be there. And so the question becomes, like, how? How? If Jesus is the light that shines into our darkness, how does he do that? How does he meet you and me in our pain and our fear, our confusion, our hopelessness? Well, Jesus answered that question in those words that we read earlier when he said, you are the light of the world. After he was arrested, executed on a Roman cross, and then rose again from the dead, that's the Easter story, Jesus started something beautiful. A movement that was made up of people like you, people like me. It's called the church. Now, I don't know what ideas come to mind when you hear that word, church. I had my own thoughts, but, over the years I've talked to some other people, and they've said, oh man, when I hear that word, church, this is what comes to mind. I think of a man-made organization that's all about following a bunch of rules and making sure you do this and you don't do that. Or that church is boring, it's weird, it's irrelevant. Most of all, church is a place that's just full of judgmental people that look down their nose at everyone else. You know what? Sadly, some of those thoughts, those ideas that come to mind for people are bang on. And that's really unfortunate because that is not what Jesus had in mind when he envisioned, empowered, and created the church. The church is to be the visible expression of Jesus on this earth. We're to be his hands and feet, bringing hope and peace and healing and forgiveness to this world and to each other. That's how Jesus shines into the darkness of our world. He does it through us. When we let God love us, when we allow him to love us, and we trust him just a little bit at a time, when we begin to follow him just a step at a time, he promises to not only be with us, but in us. You see, it's not our light that we take into the world, it's his light that's in us. Here's how Jesus put it. He says, if you love me, and he's referring to himself, he says, obey my commandments. Which there's two, love God and love others. And he says, and I will ask the Father, God, and he will give you another advocate who will never, don't miss these words, leave you, never leave you. He is the Holy Spirit who leads into all truth. The world cannot receive him because it isn't looking for him and doesn't recognize him. But you know him because he lives with you now, and he's referring to himself, and later will be in you. And it seems weird, and it's hard to kind of wrap our head around, and I'd love to get into it more, but I don't really have time. But just let that reality sink in for a moment. Jesus, who at one time said, I am the light of the world, is now in us. And so we are now the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. Yeah, it can be really easy to look at this pandemic, this whole COVID-19 thing, as an obstacle. And you know what? Sure, it's changed the way we meet on a Sunday morning, but it in no way has canceled or put church on hold. Not in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, I can't help but think that we as a church, a group of people who are attempting to do our best to follow Jesus, have the best opportunity to be a light, to be that city on a hill, to be that beacon of hope for this city. And you may be thinking, okay, well, how? Like, how does that even happen? What does that look like? Well, I'm really glad you asked. I'm going to leave you with a couple of ideas here on how we can be the light and unleash God's love on this city. And the very first thing we can do, it seems so simple, yet it's something we tend not to do, but the first thing we can do is pray. Pray, which is simply talking with God, just like you would talk to a friend. And I always go with the KISS principle. Keep it simple. I won't use stupid. I'll just say silly. Keep it simple. The best prayer you can pray, God, help me. Help me to see others as you see them. Help me to recognize the opportunities where I can be a light shining into a dark situation. Whatever that happens to be. Prayer is simply a conversation with God. And the beautiful thing about it is it generally takes our focus off of our circumstances and redirects our focus to the reality that God is more than enough. That he will provide everything we need all the time. And when we live in that reality, we can whack worry over the head. Listen to these words. Do not worry about anything. Easier said than done, I know. But don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. And who doesn't need a bit of that right now? If you need prayer, maybe you're the one needing prayer. And bottom truth is, we all need prayer. That's why Jesus said, pray for one another. Paul said, pray for one another. So if you've got something pressing on you right now, weighing you down, we've got an awesome team of people that are online right now, ready to talk with you and meet with you online. You just simply click that prayer button in the chat room, and it'll take you to a private chat room with one of the prayer team members. Completely confidential. No one else will ever see that conversation, just the two of you. And if you're not on the chat room, you can just simply go to our website, click on Connect with Us. That'll take you to a page that says, can you pray for me? And you just fill it out, and we'll be praying for you. Another way you and I might provide a ray of hope to be a light is by reaching out to our neighbors, particularly those that are more at risk, the elderly, somebody with an underlying health issue. Everyone should look out not only for his own interests, but the interests of others. That could be, picking up groceries for your neighbor, prescriptions, medications, driving them to a doctor's appointment, or simply knocking on the door and saying, hey, how are you doing? Just want you to know we're thinking about you. If you need anything, just let us know. Another thing we can do is keep meeting together. And you might think, well, how do we do that? We can. It's like, well, actually we can. They're just smaller gatherings of people. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. For he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, but encouraging one another. The last few weeks, we've been talking quite a bit about these connection groups that we started. I don't know if you've had a chance to take advantage of them, but I would encourage you to do so. Most of them meet online via Zoom, and that's something we're all familiar with. Some of us are going like, I've had it with Zoom, but hey, we're just doing what we can. And they meet during the week, various times, various days, for about an hour. Groups of 6 to 8 people. And here, what they are is a place to reconnect with friends that maybe you haven't seen since this whole thing began way back in March. Or maybe meet some new people. And the cool thing about that is you get to do it from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to go to some strange person's house or anything like that. And they're just about sharing a funny story that happened to you last week, or how you've been kind of managing to get through this strange time we find ourselves in, and listen to other people's stories. And I can guarantee you, as you do that, you'll be thinking, oh man, I thought I was the only one. Yeah, I've had that same experience. The format is relaxed, and the content is completely up to your group. Some groups are talking about the Sunday message with the coffee questions that we provide. They're online, and it just helps you go deeper into the message. Some are sharing, like I just mentioned, just how everyone's doing. Some are reading a book together. But what we want all our groups to do is to explore ways with one another how that group can unleash God's extravagant love on this city. Whatever that looks like for that group. And if you haven't plugged into a group, man, I highly recommend you do. I'll just share my experience. The first night the group I'm in, we met. I don't know how much they laughed, but I just about split a spleen laughing at everyone's COVID hair, because I haven't seen them in so long. It was like, whoa, dude, like, I didn't realize that's like the 70s, man. It's getting pretty long. So it's worth joining a group just for that. But you know what? You better hurry, because the salons are open and all the COVID hair's kind of disappearing. Peter, our youth guy, got rid of his man bun. Yay. But hey, what do you do, right? So if you haven't joined one, head to the website, click on the top of the page, Connection Groups. You can learn more. You can sign up. If you want to start your own group, if you've got a group of friends that you want to meet with, we'll show you how to do that. If you're joining us for the first time, and you're wondering, what kind of church is this? Like, who goes to this church? We are a ragtag collection of surrendered and transformed people who simply love God and love others. And we are transfixed by God's story and his heart for this city. And so we are seed throwers and fire starters, hope peddlers and grace givers, risk takers and light bearers. And we believe that things done in great love will change the world. So my challenge is we might not be able to meet together in a large gathering on Sunday, but that does not mean the meeting place ceases to exist. So let's go be the church. Let's be the light that Jesus calls us to be. Honored and privileged to be on this journey with you. I would invite you to pray with me. God, we just thank you for the technology that we have that allows us to still gather together, to encourage one another, to inspire one another, to work through some of the questions that are going through our mind with these strange times that we find ourselves in. But we know that this didn't catch you off guard. And this could really be a great time for us to reevaluate, like, how can we impact this city in a deeper way? And so just help us to be courageous as we step out and begin to emerge into this new normal, that we embrace it, that we don't push back from it. There's some great things happening in churches all throughout Nanaimo and across Canada. And so we just thank you that we get to be a part of that, and that you're with us always. And you are the light that shines from us to others. So help us to be that church. And we pray this in your awesome name. Amen.